Should have your books open to page 66, starting section 2.2. I'll grade your 2.1 after we get started on 2.2 if you work on your homework. First thing we're talking about in 2.2 as far as linear equations go is how to determine whether an equation is linear or not. Most of the time up until now, all you've done is linear stuff. I'm sure in geometry you have seen some x squares, things like that. For the most part, it's been linear. Well, in Algebra 2, we have a lot of different ones. So you need to be able to determine whether an equation is linear or not. In that paragraph on page 66, it goes over how you tell. So there are several ways to know. Number one, says an equation, a linear equation has no operation other than addition, subtraction, and multiplication of a variable. That means you can't be dividing by a variable. So if you have an equation where you have a variable in the denominator, that is not linear. An example would be if you had 1 over x, or 5 over x, or 3x plus 5 over x. Doesn't matter, you cannot have a variable in the denominator. So some of your homework problems, that's all you have to do. You just look at the equation. If you see something like that, you write it's not linear. Secondly, variables may not be multiplied together. So a simple example of that, you couldn't have x, y. If you have variables that are being multiplied, you cannot, or it is not linear. No exponents other than 1. No exponents other than 1 with a variable. So you couldn't have an x to the third in the problem. If you have an x to the third, it is not linear. That would be a cubic function, which we'll get to later in the year. Okay, so those are the things you've got to check and make sure of. Another way you could remember that, no operations other than add, subtract, and multiply would be no variables in the denominator. So I guess you could either include that one there or make it a fourth one either way. But those are the things you've got to check. So looking down there at example 1, f of x equals 5 over x plus 6. Would that be linear or not? No? Why? Got a variable in the denominator. So it's as simple as that. On the homework, no. Feel free to abbreviate. One thing you need to distinguish, and I'll go ahead and make this point right now, if you have 1/2 x, that is fine, because you don't have a variable in the bottom. It's off to the side. So you can still have fractions, just can't have a variable down there. So something like that, there's no problem. Linear or not? Is that one linear?
No.
No, why?
Two variables together.
Two variables multiplied together. So that one is also a no. And one more. Easy one. Linear or not? Why is it not? You got an exponent higher than 1. You've got an exponent that is a 4. That one is not linear. So literally on your homework, that's one of the first things you'll have to do. Say whether it's linear or not. And if it's not, you have to get the root. Next thing over on page 67 is standard form or general form. I will use both terms interchangeably. So either way, standard or general form of an equation. AX plus BY equals C. So if you have to get an equation in general or standard form, that's what it has to look like when you get done. And there's a couple other specific rules. A has to be positive and not a fraction. A has to be positive and not a fraction. So we will just do a few of those where we have to get the equation in standard form. You are used to seeing something like y equals 2x minus 3. Does anybody know what form that is? That is slope-intercept form. Very good. So they want us to change this from slope-intercept form to general form. And again, that's AX plus BY equals C. So here's your AX. This would be your BY. And the number without a letter, that is your C. So is C on the correct side of the equation that it's supposed to be on? Yes. C is supposed to be on the right side. It's already on the right side. Is your X term on the correct side? No. So how would we move this to X? Subtract it. It's positive. You're going to subtract it. Do what? Yeah, I just didn't write that one down. You mean the one in the book? Yeah, I just changed it. So what's left over here then? Minus 3. And how are we going to rewrite this part? Because you can't actually do y minus 2x. Which term do you want to come first, the x or the y? The x. So all you're going to do is write negative 2x plus y. So is everything in the right spot? Yeah, but what's the problem? The x is negative. This can't be negative. This has to be positive. That's what that rule right there says. So how would we make it positive if it's negative? Divide or multiply either one, doesn't matter which, everything times negative 1. So negative 1 times 2x, all it's going to do is change all the signs and make that positive 3. So make sure you do that final step. Once you get everything put in the right spot, make sure you divide or multiply by negative 1. 2y equals 4x plus 5. So this one's pretty much the same, another example of the same thing. What's in the wrong place? The x term. So we need to move this 4x over, subtract it just like we did in the last one. So we would have negative 4x plus 2y equals positive 5. And as far as doing that multiplication times or division times negative 1, if you don't show that, I'm all right with that. As long as you know you need to change all the signs, that's totally fine. 4x minus 2y equals negative 5. And that is n standard.